Like and follow. This is a work by Necromancer. Summon skeletons. Fantasy comic about rising to become the Skeleton King. Skeleton Soldier descended system. From then on, there was a cheat code. Attributes will not disappear with each rebirth. Who gave him such magical power? Come and chase with me. You can save the videos. Start watching from the first episode. The main show begins. The guard captain said, "So what if we hand it over? Cut us some slack. I'll leave you a whole corpse, and then release your subordinates." Guard captain laughed out loud upon hearing that. "Totally ridiculous. Are you also a drug addict? Do you know who I am? Dare to negotiate with me? Tired of living?" Skeleton Soldier did not respond. He continued, "A few months ago, a woman came to town to buy armor. Then she became a cold corpse, and that armor is the one I'm wearing." Guard captain laughed again after hearing this. "Are you here for revenge? Are you not a fool? Women like that, I don't know how many I've killed. How could I remember?" After listening, Skeleton Soldier's anger shot straight to the sky. With one slash, he slit his throat. Killing that new recruit did not quell his fury. He drew his sword and charged at the guard captain. As a result, the captain threw a spider egg at him. Then, with a look of enjoying the show, he gloated. They then saw Spider Queen. She charged towards the Skeleton Soldier like a mad woman. She thrust her foot forward. The Skeleton Soldier quickly dodged. His sword was cut in half. His armor was pierced through. The captain, seeing his condition, thought he was surely doomed. So he turned and left. Leave the Skeleton Soldier as an extra meal for the spider. But just as he turned around, a huge explosion sounded from behind him. The sky was filled with fire, illuminating the dark cave. Then came the miserable scream of the Spider Queen. The Spider Queen was engulfed in flames. The Skeleton Soldier walked out from the flames. The guard captain was terrified. It turned out that the opponent was not a person. The Skeleton Soldier was holding a flamethrower. He was simultaneously spraying fire retardant on his upper body. "I said I would make you die painfully." He sprayed flames in the direction of the captain. The captain quickly dodged. Spider Queen is also not long for this world. The spider monsters, seeing this, launched an attack. The Skeleton Soldier was not afraid in the slightest. He raised his hand and unleashed a burst of fire. Both the people and the spiders perished in the flames. The Skeleton Soldier was overwhelmed with anger. He looked up to see a sea of flames. Guard captain escaped from the center of the flames. But the fire on his body had not been extinguished. Skeleton Soldier followed closely behind. He saw him kneel down and beg for mercy. He showed no mercy at all. "If you kill Ruby, don't expect to get out alive. It's all over." Then he raised his hand and sprayed towards the guard captain. Screams filled the air. Yet he did not stop. Immersed in the pleasure of revenge, the Skeleton Soldier didn't notice his own body was melting. At this moment, he also forgot about the still unconscious Alice. He just wanted the guard captain to die a miserable death, to turn into ashes. He wanted him to suffer 100, 1,000 times more painfully than Ruby did. Until his head melted and fell off, he realized he had gone too far. But it was already too late. The Skeleton Soldier died once more. This time, will the resurrection point change again? Like and follow. This is a work by Necromancer. Summon Skeleton. Fantasy comic about a skeleton's rise to become the Skeleton King. Skeleton Soldier descends system. From then on, there was a cheat code. Attributes will not disappear each time reincarnated. Who gave him such magical powers? Hurry up and join me in chasing it. You can save the video. Start watching from the first episode. The main feature begins. Skeleton Soldier suddenly stood up. Yes, he was resurrected again. Seeing Alice sleeping soundly on his lap, he felt a bit puzzled. How exactly did he die? Didn't he use a fire retardant? He continued pondering. Alice woke up at this moment. He stood up. He took Alice to Narlin. Then the plot continues with Alice arguing with the grocery store owner. He skipped the current plot, focusing intently on the corner where the blacksmith was hiding. Then he normally pulled Alice away. Blacksmith appeared just like in the previous plot. Skeleton soldier did not threaten with a sharp sword like last time. Instead, it directly grabbed his collar and pushed him against the wall. He started questioning. You are the blacksmith of the village, right? Do you have something to say to me? Let's go to your blacksmith shop and talk. The skeleton soldier's series of 3 questions left the blacksmith confused. Afterwards, they went to the blacksmith shop. Following the storyline, the blacksmith revealed the guard patrol's whereabouts to him. Then came the familiar searching actions. That secret weapon flames of Glassmere. Alice was still greatly shocked. The two continued to repeat the plot, starting with that familiar conversation. Skeleton soldier didn't pay attention and just stared at the flames in a daze. He opened his mouth and asked, Is there another device? Blacksmith was surprised and said, How did you know? You even answered quickly. Skeleton soldier held the device and examined it closely. Blacksmith was still rummaging for something. Sure enough, it was a fire retardant. He indicated to sprinkle it on himself, making it possible to not feel the heat. Skeleton soldier stared at the bag of fire retardant, thinking about something. Then suddenly took the fire retardant, sprayed it on the blacksmith. Then the skeleton soldier raised the flamethrower and aimed it at the blacksmith. You can't feel the heat, can you? You're messing with me. Then give it a try. Blacksmith was so scared that cold sweat was pouring out. He hurriedly waved his hands and said no. Skeleton soldier let out a cold snort and withdrew its hand. You probably just can't feel the heat. Once or twice is fine, but if it happens too many times, I will be burned to death. Afterwards, he grabbed Blacksmith by the collar. He lifted the whole person up and questioned, Why did you try to harm us? Blacksmith struggled while laughing. Because you are not human at all. Skeleton soldier was somewhat surprised. What? In a fit of anger, he threw the blacksmith aside. In a cold voice he asked, Who are you? How exactly do you know? Blacksmith stated that he has been in this line of work for over 50 years. He can recognize what's inside the armor at a glance. No matter why you are fighting with the guards, it's considered a good deed before you die. Alice shouted from the side. Are you crazy, old man? She turned to the skeleton soldier and said, Finish off this old man. The latter responded, Forget it. He doesn't have many years left anyway. Then he turned to take Alice away to seek revenge against the guards. He was, however, drawn to a sword in the corner. He drew the sword and, upon inspection, it was indeed a fine blade. The blacksmith, however, spoke up to stop him. This is not for sale. It is my life's proudest work. Then the sharp sword pointed directly at his throat. Skeleton soldier said, This sword is compensation for us. Do you have any other questions? Like and follow. This is a work by Necromancer. Summon Skeletons. A fantasy comic where the skeletons rise to become the Skeleton King. Skeleton Soldier descends system. From then on, there was a cheat code. The attributes will not disappear with each rebirth. Who gave him such magical powers? Hurry up and join me to chase it. You can save the video. Start watching from the first episode. The main feature begins. Then the two of them took advantage of the night. They arrived at the entrance of the dungeon before the guard team. He had the sharp sword on his back. It seems that the blacksmith had compromised. Alice smiled and said, Then we must be careful using this flamethrower. Then she hummed a song as she walked into the dungeon. The skeleton soldier watched Alice's back. He fell silent. Recalling how Alice had fallen into danger because of him, he felt he couldn't let Alice continue to take risks anymore. He walked to Alice's side and apologized to her. Then he knocked her out. Alice fell to the ground in confusion. Skeleton Soldier picked her up. Place her in a safe place. Say to her, "You rest first. I'll be back soon. I don't want to let you fall into danger because of me anymore." After saying this, he turned and entered the depths of the dungeon. The first thing he did was burn the spider monster. The spider monsters wailed in agony in the fire. He cautiously used the flamethrower to avoid overuse and accidentally burning himself to death. And just at this moment, Guard Captain also entered the dungeon. He was somewhat surprised. Why are the spiders in the cave nowhere to be seen? Facing the unfathomable visitor in front of him, he was quite apprehensive. He was momentarily at a loss. The subordinates nearby began to whisper and offer suggestions. Then the guard captain pretended to be innocent and approached. He asked the skeleton soldier if he was lost. "We are the guard squad. We can help you leave." But he was hiding spider eggs behind his back. He was going to use his familiar trick again. It's a classic case of diverting trouble to the east. Skeleton Soldier coldly refused. After speaking, he swiftly drew his sword and slashed towards the guard captain. The spider egg fell to the ground and shattered. Guard captain tore off the mask of hypocrisy and started cursing. Skeleton Soldier emanated overwhelming hatred at this moment. "Remember? We had an agreement. I said I would make you die in pain." Guard captain was completely confused. Where did this madman come from? Drawing a sword at the slightest provocation. "Brothers, attack!" Skeleton Soldier. He took out the flamethrower and got ready. Countless flames spewed out from the gun. The crowd howled in the flames. The guard captain, seeing this, prepared to flee. He secretly approached the skeleton soldier. Will the skeleton soldier be able to turn the danger into safety? Please watch the next episode. Like and follow. This is a work by Necromancer. Summon Skeleton. Fantasy comic about a turnaround to become the Skeleton King. Skeleton Soldier descends the system. From then on, there was a cheat code. Attributes do not disappear with each rebirth. Who gave him such magical powers? Hurry and come chase with me. You can save the video. Start watching from the first episode. The main feature begins. Guard captain sneaks up. He prepares to make a move. He suddenly thrusts forward. He caught the skeleton soldier by surprise. Skeleton Soldier hurriedly used the flamethrower to defend. As a result, the flamethrower was cut and damaged by the latter. Guard captain smiled proudly. "Now it's become scrap metal, hasn't it? Let's see how arrogant you can be now. Truly foolish. Burn all the eggs. The Spider Queen must hate you to the core." Then he picked up the only remaining egg. Approached the Spider Queen. He threatened sinisterly. "If you don't want to lose your last child, you better listen to me. Kill him for me." The Spider Queen then quickly charged at the skeleton soldier. He held a sharp sword, ready for battle. He drew his sword to block. The Spider Queen's strength was astonishingly great. The skeleton soldier was immediately thrown against the wall. He trembled as he supported his body. Without the undying flame, he had no way to deal with the Spider Queen. Then the Spider Queen's leg stabbed out once again. The skeleton soldier hurriedly blocked with his sword. Continuous attacks followed. He couldn't withstand it. Meanwhile, the guard captain was gloating on the side. The skeleton soldier accidentally tripped and lost his balance. His body fell backward. Spider Queen was pressing hard at this moment, giving skeleton soldier no chance to catch its breath. At this critical moment, he caught a glimpse of the flames not far away with his peripheral vision. He looked at the everlasting fire. It was still burning. He decided to take a gamble. At the very moment Spider Queen launched the attack, he rose and lunged towards the flame. Soon after, Skeleton Soldier's helmet fell off. Guard Captain was overjoyed. Spider Queen was also extremely pleased. Then her expression changed drastically. Flames burned her legs. She fell to the ground, continually struggling, trying to extinguish the fire. Guard Captain widened his eyes at Skeleton Soldier. He watched as Skeleton Soldier revealed his true form, holding the flaming divine sword in his hand. He seemed like a grim reaper coming for revenge, invoking immense fear. "I told you I would make you die in agony!" At this moment, the Spider Queen severed her front legs to escape the flames and once again launched an attack on the Skeleton Soldier. Wielding the Flame God's sword, Skeleton Soldier seemed invincible. Every kill made the Spider Queen suffer. Then he kicked his hind legs, preparing to use this vigorous strike to execute the Spider Queen. After this strike landed, the Spider Queen toppled to the ground. It was on its last breath. The previous madness was gone. Meanwhile, those watching the show from the side. At this time, the guard captain's face was deathly pale. Afterward, he prepared to strike first and gain the upper hand. He quietly approached him. He took his life while he was off guard. A skeleton soldier who had experienced ambushes would certainly be on guard. He countered with a sword strike that cut off the guard captain's hand. The latter fell to his knees. He cried out in pain. Skeleton Soldier said disdainfully, "Luckily, there's the flame. No need to stop your bleeding. It would be bad to die from blood loss. You must keep your promise." Demonic words made the guard captain even more terrified. He cried out loudly for help. He hoped his subordinates would come to save him. However, his subordinates had already died in the fire. He then turned to the spiders for help. The spiders had already been roasted. Endless fear engulfed the guard captain. He struggled powerlessly. Who could save him? Even if you shout until your throat is hoarse, no one will come to save you. Skeleton Soldier watched him crawl forward. However, he ended up getting caught in the flames. He tried to extinguish it. But the flames of Glassmere are not just for show. He struggled to keep running away. Skeleton Soldier kindly reminded, "Watch your step." He was too busy running for his life to pay any attention. Suddenly, he missed a step and fell off the cliff. Skeleton Soldier walked to the edge of the cliff to take a look. It's truly tragic. It's all self-inflicted. It's all over. Skeleton Soldier looked at the sword lodged in it. It's indeed useful. It's just too dangerous. Then he threw the sword off the cliff. Just as he was about to go back to find Alice, the barely alive Spider Queen, it dragged its battered body, slowly approached the Skeleton Soldier. This move greatly shocked him. Why can it still stand up? It doesn't make sense. He began to regret throwing that sword too early. Just when he was thinking about what to do, Spider Queen extended her leg toward the soldier. Just as her sharp claw was about to reach his eyes, the Skeleton Soldier braced himself for a great battle. However, in the next second, Spider Queen picked up a broken spider egg from beside his foot. It held the egg. Finally, it died contentedly. Skeleton Soldier looked at the fallen Spider Queen. Filled with mixed emotions, he sighed. It seemed she only wanted to protect her unborn child. Then the Spider Queen's body turned to ashes, leaving behind a red jade. The spiderweb dungeon was successfully cleared. Various attributes increased. A new skill was acquired. At the same time, a new side quest was unlocked. Skeleton Soldier carried a large bag of loot out of the spider cave. At this time, Alice said resentfully, "Do you know how sad I am?" The Skeleton Soldier turned to look at the angry Alice. Alice was furious. She continued to shout at him. "Am I really so unworthy of your trust? You actually left me behind and went into the dungeon alone." Skeleton Soldier remained silent. He didn't explain anything. Instead, he handed the package in his hand to Alice, hoping to calm her down. "Don't think you can get away with this." What met her eyes were shining gold coins, which made Alice swallow the rest of her words. She shyly turned her head away, indicating she wouldn't argue with the skeleton soldier anymore. Seeing this, the skeleton soldier also felt the crisis was averted and breathed a sigh of relief. Then Alice, with a serious expression, stated that she would train diligently. "I can't be a burden to you anymore," not letting him think of abandoning her. After avenging the grudges, skeleton soldier also hadn't decided where to go. Alice proudly stated she would take him to the guild branch to have a look. He had a puzzled expression on his face. Then he went along with Alice. When they arrived at the destination, they saw a group of children playing and frolicking. The house was also very grand. Looking at the children in front of them, skeleton soldier also felt somewhat puzzled. "Is this your branch?" A little girl rushed over and hugged her. Alice asked if she was okay. Alice held the little girl with great tenderness. Smiling, she asked her sister to greet their savior. At this time, the other children also happily rushed towards Alice. It seems that Alice has won the hearts of the children. At this moment, they heard a mature voice. Both of them then looked up. They saw a young man. He was smiling and greeting them. It turned out to be Director. Then he led the two inside. The man poured water for Alice. The two warmly inquired about each other's recent situations. Skeleton soldier remained silent on the side. The man started inquiring about skeleton soldier's identity. From Alice's mouth, he learned that after skeleton soldier had helped her a lot. The man began to bow in gratitude while introducing himself. His name is Ron, and he is the director of the orphanage. Skeleton soldier has some social anxiety. He didn't respond. The man suggested that wearing the armor must be uncomfortable. "Take it off. I won't mind your appearance." The skeleton soldier felt a bit flustered after hearing it, and asked how they knew. At this moment, a child's scream was heard from outside the door. "Like and follow." Ron spoke up to ask about the situation. He still had a smile on his face. After identifying himself to the other party, "Please ask them to release the child first." The visitor stated that they also run an orphanage. They wanted to give this child to the Earl as an adopted daughter. This child has escaped. They are having trouble fulfilling their duty. Ron still smiled and said, "What should we do? Even if she is an adopted daughter and is being abused, she would surely want to escape, right?" The man became furious when he heard this. The woman beside him stopped him. "Don't meddle in other people's affairs. We need to take her away. Just pretend you didn't see anything. Aren't you running the orphanage for profit as well? Why don't we cooperate?" Ron said with a smile. "His attitude is very stubborn. That won't do. I refuse. I didn't open an orphanage for those fat pigs to have fun." The woman was also very angry after hearing what he said. "Fine. You didn't listen to kind advice. Then don't blame me for being impolite. Get him." The people nearby grabbed weapons and charged at Ron. Skeleton soldier saw this and prepared to step forward to help. Alice stopped him. She said, "Let them fend for themselves." Then they saw the two of them raise their knives and strike at Ron. Ron did not dodge either, letting them hack at his body. The woman sneered coldly from the side. But then her face changed dramatically, and she broke out in a cold sweat. Ron's wound did not spurt blood. Instead, a green liquid flowed out. And the two men were enveloped by the liquid, unable to breathe. Every human child is pure and innocent. How did they become so ugly when they grew up? Only Ron's right eye gleamed with an eerie red light. The woman was shocked and turned pale at the sight. Ron's green liquid surged toward the woman like a tide. The woman was quickly engulfed by the liquid. Skeleton Soldier was also extremely surprised at this moment. All three were absorbed by Ron, leaving their clothes scattered on the ground. It seems that becoming a sub-director is not easy. He is not as harmless as he appears on the surface. Skeleton Soldier curiously asked about Ron's identity. Ron then stated that he was just an ordinary slime. He hid his identity to secure a place among humans. Skeleton Soldier was at a loss for words, plain and unremarkable. Like and follow. Exceptionally outstanding Ron. He picked up the child and began to comfort him. Skeleton Soldier asked worriedly, "What should we do in the aftermath?" "The backers of those guys, they should be nobles, right?" Ron wasn't worried at all. He still had a face full of smiles and said calmly, "It's okay." Skeleton Soldier knew this gentle and jade-like face. His methods behind the scenes were not so gentlemanly. He glanced at the person next to him with hands on their hips. The very cocky Alice fell silent. Then the three of them went back into the house. Skeleton Soldier was gossiping. "Why did you become the director of the orphanage?" Then he leaned against the window and began to tell. "Slime has no gender. No relatives. Humans are different. They go through many changes from childhood to adulthood. I find it fascinating. Although we slime can change in many ways. But it's just a superficial change." Then he joked again. "Do you want me to transform into a skeleton and then talk to you?" Skeleton Soldier repeatedly shook his head and waved his hands, indicating that it was unnecessary. Then he asked Ron how he saw through his true form. Alice quickly said, "The director is an appraiser. He can appraise the characteristics of items and races." Ron said with a smile, "You have helped Alice a lot. If there is anything you want to appraise, you can give it to me as a token of appreciation." The Skeleton Soldier thought for a moment and then took out the red gem. He handed it to Ron. After Ron took the red gem, he began to use his power. He was soon surrounded by green light. His hands turned into slime, enveloping the red gem. Skeleton Soldier looked at the scene before him. Then he thought, no wonder. Alice wasn't surprised to see me at all. She lives in an orphanage run by monsters. She's seen a lot. Seeing a talking skeleton is no big deal. A moment later, a ringing sound interrupted his thoughts. Ron said with a smile, "The identification is complete. This gemstone is extremely valuable." The status window of the red gem popped up. The words, "Reincarnation," caught the Skeleton Soldier's attention. Suddenly, a new situation arose. At this moment, the assimilation rate suddenly began to decline. Skeleton Soldier's head was buzzing. He had a splitting headache and his body was a bit unsteady. Ron hurried forward to support him and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" The headache subsided. Skeleton Soldier recovered. He asked Ron if he had an extra sword. Ron said he had to go check at the blacksmith's shop. He will repair the Skeleton Soldier's armor while he's at it. The Skeleton Soldier hurriedly declined the enthusiastic Ron and solemnly said, "You have helped Alice a lot. Let me arrange a room for you. Have a good rest tonight." The Skeleton Soldier respectfully accepted the offer. Soon night fell. Skeleton Soldier took out the red jade and studied it. This thing can actually reincarnate? But what exactly does reincarnation mean? Could it be that it can make me stronger? He leaned on the windowsill, pondering. At this moment, Alice's voice came through. Skeleton Soldier turned to look at her. Alice looked at him with a gentle expression. "Are you looking at the stars?" "No, I am thinking about some things." "What about your sister?" "Asleep. Why don't you keep her company? She's about to leave." "I don't want to see her sad. Someday, we will live happily together." Alice became a little dejected as she spoke. Alice then handed her pocket watch to the Skeleton Soldier. He remembered that this was the most precious thing to Alice. She was still very young at that time. She just remembered being abandoned. Skeleton Soldier asked. Why give it to me? Alice slowly said. If I become the vice president, you also completed the task. Will you live with us? Skeleton Soldier acts like a reckless fool, facing the sudden confession from Alice. He was somewhat caught off guard. He indeed still does not understand romance. The two of them locked eyes. They both fell into silence. Time seemed to stand still. The surroundings also became even quieter.